Hello, I'm Jody Wolf, and you're watching Expoz September 17, 2017 at 10:48 p.m. Birmingham. And topic is, I'm going to show you where we have already entered into at least some of the seals that's written in the book of Revelations. Now, I want to go back one moment to the movie Rewind, and there was a time it gave when the woman asked her husband, well, how much time do we have left? He said 2 minutes and 39 seconds. So when she hung up, she stood there and started praying, and then the nuke went off and it showed it destroying her. But what's different about 2 minutes and 39 seconds? Back in 2013. What's odd about that? Well, it's reversing, it's depicting September 23, the date that we're looking at, which is next Saturday, a week from yesterday. That'll be September 23. The 20th will be the Hebrew New Year. That'll be 5778. But I just wanted to tell you, 2 minutes, 39 seconds. Well, reverse it, and it's September 23. Just wanted to bring that up. I forgot to mention it earlier. But I also wanted to tell you that I believe that we have already had some seals opened. And by that, go back to 2011. If you remember, everything on the news, in January 1st, January 2nd, 3rd, up through the 6th, they were talking about all the birds that fell from the sky the night before. And people said, well, it was fireworks that did it. And I said, that's hogwash. And everybody else said, that's hogwash. And but they're just picking at things, trying to create a problem for them to die and let you just ignore it or say, well, you know what, we won't use as many fireworks. And that was so far from the truth, it's unreal. Now go to, again, that day, and you see all the blackbirds, red-winged blackbirds that dropped from the sky. Guys, you heard only this much of it because it didn't happen just here. It happened around the world. And it wasn't 5,000 in Kentucky or in Arkansas. It was in the millions because it continued for days. And the millions of birds died. And then you see fish that came up in April, in May. Millions, by the hundreds of millions, fish were dying. But that's what they could see. We can only see this much of the sea and the islands around it. We don't know what happens out at sea. When a whale dies, 99% of the time they drop to the bottom where they are devoured by the creatures or the things that live on the bottom. Well, they didn't talk about the millions of seals, penguins, whales, large fish that died. They just stopped telling you the news about how many fish were dying. Well, what about the white-tailed deer in the Snake River? Snake River, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Montana, part of Idaho, and then there's other rivers in Wyoming. What about the 7,000 white-tailed deer that died in one single night in one valley alone on the Snake River? What got them all together that killed them? And that wasn't all. About the 24 other times the news did not tell you about. They didn't tell you about the hundreds of thousands that died, not only here, but other countries. Not only deer, white-tailed deer, but antelope, and then other deer, and elk. Other animals dying by the tens of thousands. One night in Vietnam, a guy that supplies buffalo meat, believe it or not, to our country, that you think is raised out here on our free-range west, No. He had 1,000 buffalo that died in a single night in Vietnam. One man, one farm. Nobody ever found out why. But he wasn't the only farmer that lost hundreds, if not thousands, of head of cattle over a time period. Around the world, the same thing occurred. What about all the fires that are going on today? What about all the fires that's been raging since 2008 and 2007 and go back years before that? And what about the ones that are raging today and all the way up through Canada? What about the town that burned up 2 years ago? And what about Siberia, the fires going on there? And what about on up through Russia, the fires and the massive heat wave? And what about the heat wave in California today, where it's triple digits in Northern California? What about the fires going on in our American West, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Nevada, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho? Still fires are going on. Fires going on in Canada. What about the crops failure in the tens of thousands of acres in our country? But add other countries and you'll get millions of acres. And you have millions of acres that have dried up. The grass has died. Go to South America. You see the tree cutting that's destroyed millions of acres, but yet trees are growing as quickly as they're cut, but it doesn't discount the fact that they're died anyway, okay? So you have millions of acres of grass dying, you have millions of acres of trees dying, you have millions and millions and billions of fish dying, millions of animals. I believe this is a third, just what the SEALs are telling us is going to happen. The SEAL says a third of this will die, a third of this will die, and a third of this will die. And it's been happening. In my own backyard, my neighbor and me own a lake. It's an acre and a half. Over 3 days, 3,000 fish, at my count, died in my lake. Why in my lake? I mean, what happened there? I'm out cutting my yard in late March, early April. And my granddaughter keeps pointing out the number of fish that are dying. So I finally, when I saw the numbers that I couldn't believe, I went every 100 feet, counted how many fish we had, and I went around the whole lake. And I did this one way and did it the other way. And I came up to about 3,000 fish died in my lake. And that was probably about a quarter of the fish in the lake. And they still not recovered. So this is happening everywhere around the world. I believe the SEALs have begun to open. And not all of them has opened, but they're continuing to open with the heat, with the fire, and then with the countries that have massive flooding. That's as bad as Harvey, but it's happening over huge places in India and in other countries. Villages are washing away today. Things are happening. The SEALs are being opened as we speak, and they have been starting back, I believe, as early as 2007, but big time in 2009 through 11. Hadn't stopped either. Fish were still dying. Squid that's never found in a certain place have washed up on the California coast, headed toward Washington. And somebody said, wonder if they made it as far as Alaska, because they've never been known, the Humboldt squid never been known to go to Alaska. Guess what? Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of squid died. And then finally somebody got a picture of a bear eating a squid on Alaska beach. So yes, as far as Alaska, and these squid never entered cold waters in their life. So why did they do that this time? Look, things are happening today, and it all points to one thing. We're in the end days. So the next event is the church being taken out. Get yourself ready for the church. Don't be left behind. Guys, I'm telling you, no one knows the day or the hour, but we know the season and the time, and it is that time and it is that season. Jody Wolf Expoz.